Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Cold War Preppers Monday night Civics, U.S. Government, Civics 101. And so tonight we're going to start on a small, what we should call it, a cruise, I guess. And we're going to go through the 100 questions that are asked of immigrants by the USCIS to become citizens. So I figured we'd start off with that. Hello, Theorists. Hello, Claude Ortega. And then after that, we'll go back into the actual book itself, and we'll begin with chapter 2 in the book. I just realized that the book is edited or written by Larry Sabato, and he's a big person on TV now as far as talking about civil rights and individual rights and the Constitution and everything else. I guess he's a constitutional attorney, and I didn't realize he wrote this book we're using. So that's really quite interesting. Little Lone Prepper, welcome. Hello. How come you're not showing up as blue? We'll have to check into that. Anyhow, so we'll wait for just a minute or two more and get some more people on here. I'm so excited. I got my Mira Safety, what's it called? It's called the Fire Pro Kit, Fire Escape Pro Kit. And it's basically a protective mask with smoke filters on it. And they came in to Saturday. And gosh, I unboxed it this morning. Wow, what a kit. What a kit. Really, really excited about that. Holly Ivans, good evening. Welcome. East Tennessee Preparedness, hello. So what do we have in the house now? We have 7. Wow, that's pretty good. 3 minutes in. So I'm just going to go ahead, and what I'll do is I'll put the banner up, and then after I put the banner up, I'll come back to chat, and I'll give you all about a minute to see what your answers are, and then we'll go into the book answer, and we'll talk about why that is the way it is. I just got a air quality alert on my cell phone that we're going to have ozone problems, I guess, for the next day here in the Central Texas area. So if everybody's ready, let's start off with question number 1, and we'll give you about 30 seconds or so to answer that. And so what is the supreme law of the United States? And I'll give you a bonus point for this. What makes it the supreme law? It even declares it itself. So if you know where it declares it itself that it is the supreme law of the U.S., then more points to you. We'll give you a couple extra points. How's that? So, I was really excited about that Mira Safety stuff. It's just unbelievable. It's great. Okay. No answers yet. There's one. Constitution. About another 5 seconds. And Yahoo! Little Lone Pepper gets 1 point. It is the Constitution. And for those of you who don't know, in Article 6, the second paragraph, it says the Constitution and the laws of the United States which shall be made in pursuance thereof, and all treaties made of which shall be made under the authority of the United States shall be the supreme law of the land. And the judges in every state shall be bound thereby, anything in the Constitution or the laws of any state to the contrary notwithstanding. So Article 6 of the Constitution says that it is the supreme law of the United States. And so let's go to question number 2. What does the Constitution do? It basically does 3 different things. So let's see if we can get 1 or 2 of those things that it does. It does 3 specific things. By the way, I'm taking these, the research for the answers comes out of this little pocket guide. You can get a free pocket guide. All you have to do is call or write to your U.S. congressperson, I guess I should say, or senator, and they provide these to the citizens for free. They'll mail you one. If you know who your congressman is and they're within driving distance, like I'm friends with our congressman. As a matter of fact, I was at Sam's Club one day, and he and I were talking, and his wife is Dutch, and so we were talking in line, and he left, and I went up to the cashier and started checking out, and I said, "Do you know who that was in front of me?" She says, "Nope." I said, "Did you see his name?" And she says, "Yes, John Carter." And I said, "Does that ring a bell?" She says, "Oh, isn't that the guy from Mars?" Which is true. John Carter. I think it was Edgar Rice Burroughs, wasn't it? Wrote John Carter, A Man from Mars, or John Carter on Mars. I said, no, that's your U.S. congressman. She goes, really? I should have gotten his autograph. And I go, yeah, you should know who he is, But anyhow, Little Lone Pepper says, keeps power in balance. Anybody else? What does the Constitution do? It does three specific things. Separation of powers. It does that. Actually, the way it does that is Article 1 says what the legislature establishes, then limits what the legislature can do. Article 2 establishes and limits what the executive branch can do. And then Article 3 establishes and limits what the judicial branch can do. So I guess that is kind of a good answer. Yeah. So yes, it establishes the branches of government, orders the judiciary process, establishes justice, framework of the government. So the answers that they're looking for at the USCIS are that number one, it sets up the government. So yes, and Articles 1, 2, and 3 specifically set up the legislature, the executive branch, and the judicial branch. It defines what the government is and what it can't do. Now, last week we talked about the prevailing mindsets, what was in their minds. And remember that we are going from an authoritarian monarchy, and we wanted to do away with that. And so the primary people like Locke and Montesquieu and Hartford and these other people were talking about the rights of man, okay? So when we define the government, one of the unique things about the U.S. Constitution is it limits what the government can do. So unless it's authorized to do it in the Constitution, it's not allowed to do it, okay? And then the third one is that the Constitution is there to protect the basic rights of its citizens. So when we take a look at those ideas of Montesquieu and Locke and the others, the idea of self-government in the late 18th century is in the first three words of the Constitution. What are the first three words of the Constitution? All right. Amen. Look at that. We got the right answer from two people right off the bat. So if we read the preamble, the very first paragraph of the Constitution says, we, the people of the United States, in order to form a more perfect union, establish justice, ensure domestic tranquility, provide for the common defense. That's that answer to the previous one. Promote the general welfare and secure the blessings of liberty to ourselves and our posterity. Do ordain and establish this Constitution for the United States of America. Yahoo! Yay! Look at that. We're heading on down the track there. Good going, people. We got several correct answers on that one. Yay! So there's the correct answer. So there are two acceptable answers for this. What is an amendment? What is an amendment? What does it do? This one's a little bit more tricky. Hello, Butch. Welcome. We're on question 4 out of 12 that we'll do tonight on from the USCIS Bank of Questions, Bank of 100 Questions to ask of new citizens or new people who want to become citizens. They have to pass these in order to become a citizen. So, what is an amendment? Diana, two, great answer. A further clarification or definition? Yes. Anybody else? So an amendment does one of two things. It either changes or adds something to the Constitution. Now, there is one time in our Constitution when it took something away from the Constitution. This is just a bonus question. Does anybody know what that one is? So which Constitution took something away? Claude, you got it. Yes. The 21st Amendment deleted the 19th Amendment. So the 19th Amendment was prohibition and said you couldn't have alcohol. So the 21st Amendment's the only one we have that said that it takes away or it does away with the 19th. So we've had one amendment that actually did away with another amendment. Hey, Phioxerus, good to go. Yes, 21st and 19th. So the 21st did away with the 19th. Fantastic. Okay, so what do we call the first 10 amendments to the Constitution? Anybody remember what we call the first 10 amendments to the Constitution? These were actually ratified a couple years after the actual Constitution itself. There was, the 19th Amendment took away your right to drink alcohol, but the 21st actually took away something in the Constitution. The Bill of Rights, yay, Scott! All right, the Bill of Rights. So it took a while after we passed the Constitution in 1785 before we had the ratification of the Bill of Rights. And so basically the Bill of Rights are individual rights of the citizens, and we also call them U.S. persons. Something very strange here in the U.S., and we refer to people quite often as U.S. persons. Now, when we say a U.S. person, so our Bill of Rights, our Constitution, protects every U.S. citizen regardless of where they are. So, for example, if you leave the United States and you go to London, the FBI cannot conduct surveillance against you in London without a warrant to do that surveillance because you are a U.S. citizen, a U.S. person. Therefore, your rights go with you as protection against the U.S. government, regardless of where you are. Likewise, any foreign person who is on U.S. property, on U.S. territory, is afforded the protections of our Constitution as well. Hello, Gray Man Prepping. Welcome. So happy to see you here tonight. Okay, so question number 6. What is one? Now, there are 5 rights that are expressly mentioned in the First Amendment. What are those 5? So you only have to name one for the citizenship test, but let's see if we can't get 5 of them. Freedom of speech is one. Absolutely. What are the other 4? Now, remember, one of the things that we had was we didn't want to have to pay a tithe to the Church of England. And we had Maryland that was Catholic, and we had the Pilgrims, and there's 3 of them: speech, press, religion. All right, fantastic. There's 2 more. One of them, basically, think of the Boston Massacre, and that'll give you an idea as to what the 4th one is. So why were those people shot at the Boston Massacre? Oh, I see. Butch Graves already has it. Freedom of assembly. Yes, yes. And the right to petition the government for redress of grievances. Absolutely correct. So let's get those up here as answers. These are the 5 rights that are guaranteed in the First Amendment. Come on. Let me get my mouse working here. Whoops. And the bottom fell off. Takes a while for the Apple mouse to connect with the computer. Come on. But I can't scroll without the mouse for some reason. Okay, so let me fix this. The battery thingy came off. But that's going to just fall all over the place. This is where a good piece of masking tape comes in handy, I guess. All right, there we go. We got that fixed. Okay, so the 5 rights mentioned under the First Amendment are the freedom of speech, freedom of religion. Remember, we wanted to escape the religious authority of the crown. The right to assemble, now this is key, the right to peaceably assemble, the right to freedom of the press, and the right to petition the government for redress of grievances. Now, I know that remember, what are we talking about? We're talking about U.S. citizens and their government, okay? So you have a right to say anything you want to, as long as it's not a threat of life. That's a limitation that's come down, a threat. One of the things that a lot of people get quite confused over is they'll say Twitter or YouTube or Facebook or anybody else cannot control me. I have the First Amendment right of free speech. Your right of free speech is against the government. The government cannot control your speech against them. You can say pretty much what you want to, as long as it's not insurrection or threatening the life of somebody or something like that. It does not guarantee your free speech against another human being or against a corporation. So, Twitter, Facebook, YouTube, they can limit your speech all they want to. That is not a violation of the Constitution. Well, thank you, Stray Kitten. Appreciate you being here. How many amendments are there to the Constitution? Very close, Diana. Very close. I wonder when the 25th was passed. I think that was like 1970. Let me check. (1967). So the 25th was 1967. Phioxerus, good, close. Little Lone Prepper and Butch Graves have it. Yay, 27. And so the latest one, the 26th Amendment, was passed in 1971, and that gave the right to vote to 18-year-olds. And then the 27th Amendment, so no law varying the compensation for the services of senators and representatives shall take effect until an election of representatives shall have intervened. So basically, Congress cannot give itself a pay raise. It can give the next Congress a pay raise, but it cannot give itself a pay raise. And then you have to have an intervening election so that if you disagree with them giving themselves a pay raise, you elect that person out and they voted for a pay raise that they won't get. Is basically what happens. Okay, question number 8. What did the Declaration of Independence do? What did the Declaration of Independence do? Now remember that the U.S. had already been at war with Great Britain for about 14 months before the Declaration of Independence was written and passed on to the British government. Asserted our independence from Britain. Absolutely, Diana. Great answer. So it asserted our independence from Great Britain, declared our independence, and said that the United States is free and an absolute sovereign country. And so those were the basic things that it did. Number 9, at the very beginning of the Declaration of Independence, it says that we have God-given rights, okay? And we find these rights to be self-evident, that all men are created equal and are endowed by their Creator with the right to the pursuit of, and then the 3. So what are those 3 rights that are endowed by their Creator? I love the Declaration of Independence. I think it was one of the most well-written documents. That and Lincoln's Gettysburg Address have got to be 2 of the best written things to ever be written. All right, Little Lone Prepper. Now, and Theoxorus, you've got it. Basically, Pursuit of Happiness. Yep, Little Lone Prepper, Theoxorus. Diana 2. Gosh, you guys know it. All right. Fantastic. Now, originally, the Pursuit of Happiness was in the Virginia. Remember, we had the 2 colonies that were advanced from everybody else. We talked about this last week, that Massachusetts had a direct democracy, whereas every church-going religious man who was of age could vote in the town hall for whatever they were doing. Whereas in Virginia, we had all of the people elected representatives. Now, the people who were doing the elected were landowners. So that kind of like goes back to that House of Burgess that we talked about. And then it goes back to the Magna Carta in England. So when we talk about the right in the Virginia Constitution, it says the right to own property, because property ownership was considered the thing that made you free, the thing that made you a, quote, lord, and have all those rights of voting and everything else. So when we got to Philadelphia, and they used the basis of the Virginia Constitution to write the U.S. Constitution, they changed the right to own property to the pursuit of happiness, which was included the ownership of property. Okay. Yeah, I'm not gonna say that that John Adams. Gosh, let me see if I can't find this quote from John Adams. I think I put it in my show notes all the time. But John Adams says that the Constitution was written for a moral person and for a moral people, and that the Constitution is only going to be good as long as a moral religious people adhere to it. So yes, you're absolutely correct. If we don't have moral religious people who believe in a higher authority, God-given rights, life, liberty, and pursuit of happiness, then that means that all those rights are granted by us to ourselves. And so if the rights are granted by us and not by God, then those rights can be changed at any time. But if we say if they're granted by God, then they cannot be changed. And that's why that endowed by our Creator becomes so important in that phraseology, is that that's something that's supernatural, that's impossible for us to take away. Whereas when we talk about things that are going on now, the First and Second Amendments especially, they are reinterpreting those. And as a matter of fact, I have a T-shirt. People kind of scoff at me when I wear it tomorrow. It says the Constitution doesn't need to be rewritten; it needs to be reread. I don't know too many that are 100% honest, to be totally honest with you. I mean, yeah, and nowadays we see this party line voting, that the only one that I think has any kind of credibility as far as being willing to vote his conscience rather than party line is oh gosh, what's his name, from West Virginia, the senator. And they keep trying to get him to swing over to Republican from Democrat. But he pretty much walks the line. He and the Pauls, I like Rand Paul and Ray Paul and Ron Paul. Both of them are libertarians. And so, I really like them. They are pretty honest as well. Okay. So in the First Amendment, it says, and I'm going to read it to you, and then I'm going to have you define that for me, because it's really important that we understand exactly what it says. What it says is, Congress shall make no laws respecting the establishment of a religion, nor prohibit the free exercise thereof. Congress shall make no law respecting the establishment of a religion, nor prohibit the free exercise thereof. So what is freedom of religion? Manchin, thank you, Dragon Slayer. Joe Manchin, thank you, Diana, too. Exactly right. So what is freedom of religion? And this is another one that's really gotten misinterpreted here recently. That's part of it. You're absolutely right, Diana, too. I mean, Dragon Slayer. The government can't tell the church what to do. Now, that was changed a little bit back with the Johnson, I think it's the Johnson Amendment. Let me look it up here real quick. Yeah, 1954, the Johnson Amendment. LBJ sought the endorsement of his local church when he was running for the Senate. And the church said, no, we won't endorse you. We think you're a crook. So he said, okay, then I'll take away, certain rights. And so until 1954, the church could say anything about government, endorse any candidate, do anything they wanted to. But because one church in, what's the name of the town? Johnson City, Texas, refused to endorse LBJ for the Senate, that law was changed so that now if you endorse a candidate or promote a political activity in church since 1954, they'll take away your tax exempt status. Diana, too, that's a great definition. Absolutely. Little known prepper, that's probably the book definition. That's great. Can't tell a church what to do, theoretically. Can't have a nationalized religion run by the state. Exactly. A human right to practice any religion without government interference, no matter what the religion is. Absolutely correct, Butch. Number 10, Congress hasn't created any laws. They just barely skirt the edges. The executive. Not necessarily true. What happens is, and I totally disagree with it, as I'm sure you do too. Congress will write a law, okay? Within that law, they delegate rulemaking authority to an executive branch, okay? So let's say that they say, we're going to give this law, and we want to have clean water, the Clean Water Act, okay? So we are going to empower the Environmental Protection Agency, and they are allowed to make any rules necessary to enforce clean water. So what they've done is they've basically given up their right for that law. They create the basic law, then they give over all of the rulemaking authority to the executive branch. I wholeheartedly disagree with that. I think that any rules should be approved by Congress before they get out to the people, rather than being delegated to the executive branch. The church can participate in government up until 1954. Correct. They did not change the Bill of Rights or anything else. That is basically a tax code issue that Johnson did, the Johnson Amendment in 1954. I don't know enough about it to where I can speak on that one way or the other. I'm sorry. I just can't talk to it with any authority on that. I'd be, no matter what I said, I would probably be wrong. So I'm not going to even tackle that one. And I think that plural marriages were authorized under state constitution until sometime in the 20th century, and there was some juxtapositioning that went on. But I'm not 100% sure that there is a law against plural marriages. I'll have to look that up. I'm just not that sure of it. Rules, not laws, are a problem, especially with the BATF. Absolutely, you're correct. So the Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, and Firearms comes up with rules, and they're published in the Federal Register. And then when they've been published twice, and they've had their open public hearings and everything else, then they take a vote and inside that agency, and then they approve or disapprove them. Then, because Congress has delegated that authority to them, it becomes basically a law, because they gave them rulemaking and lawmaking authority. Hello, Orion Preparedness. Welcome. My favorite constellation. And it has one of the coolest sounding stars in Orion's belt, Betelgeuse. Not the bad guy. This is a different one. So let me see here, just real quick. I'm going to. Was plural marriages outlawed? Okay, so let me see here. United States. There's not a federal law. It's all state laws, according to Wikipedia. And but it was outlawed in federal territories by the Edmunds Act. So, Guam, District of Columbia, Puerto Rico, and those places. Then Utah has a law against polygamy, but then they reduced it to a third-degree felony for a minor infraction in 2020. So Yeah. That's another interesting question is about marriage licenses. So and we can go back to the First Amendment on this one, freedom of religion. The same thing with polygamy, um, and that is that and up until 1867, marriages and even way past then, marriages were controlled by the church and not by the state. So the very first marriage license was granted in 1867, and I forget the name of the town in Kansas. And the reason is because they had a free black slave who wanted to marry a white woman. So in order to prohibit or to at least limit the amount of interracial marriages, the city came up when they said you have to have a license in order to be married inside our city limits. Well, one of the things was you had to be of the same race. So this couple could not get their license to marry in the city, so they couldn't get married in the city. And then I think all the other cities in the United States started thinking about it, saying, hey, this is a source of revenue. I mean, people are going to get married anyway. So if they want a license, we'll charge them $5 for the license, and it's a way we can make more money. So all of a sudden, what had been a religious thing controlled by the church turned into a civil thing, and it ended up being another form of revenue for the U.S. government. Now, since that started going on for the states within the U.S. government, let me put it that way. So since that's been going on since 1867, most of it thinks that's the way it's always been. But my grandparents, their marriage license, marriage certificate, if you will, was basically in the family Bible. And they were married in the church and everything else. And so that's, the church was the one who regulated that. Same thing with orphanages and hospitals. They were both products of the church. And then the federal government said, no, we're going to take over orphanages. Then they said, and then we've got all these other different things. Probably the first big healthcare center outside of the church was, what's the name of it? It's now an insurance group, and they started with the mining and logging out in Northwest U.S. in Washington and Oregon. But that was one of the very first public-private healthcares other than church. Yeah, and so there's and this goes back and I can understand this goes back to that separation of civil versus religious ceremonies. So if you only have one civil license, if you haven't got two civil licenses at the same time, then theoretically you're not in violation of the law, right, or the state law. However, you can, if the church allows you to have 7 church marriages, then you're only claiming one tax deduction, right? So nobody's going to know the difference. And the church and there's government, federal government or state governments don't necessarily communicate that well. So yeah, that makes sense. Um, so you can have a religious wife under religious auspices who is not a civil wife, and therefore you're not in violation of the Polygamy Act. We wholeheartedly concur with you, Reaper, and it's coming down. Did you hear that today some pilot punched out of an F-35 that was on autopilot, and the government's now asking for help in locating the downed airplane? That it just kept on flying. They don't know where it went. It's below the radar. It's somewhere. Nobody knows where it is. Nobody knows where it went down. Let me see here. Dragon Slayer says that the birth certificate is just a tax number they use to determine how much money to print based on how much income each person is supposed to be able to make. Could be. Yes, and it appears that tax base. How can we get more taxes? I was talking with a friend and who is moving up into the Northeast. Oh, Massachusetts. And we were talking over the phone, and he's been up there about 3 or 4 months. He says, "Oh my God," he says, "you aren't going to believe." He says, the property tax up here is way cheaper than Texas. Man, you guys get slaughtered with property tax, but we get slaughtered with personal income tax and city income tax. And I said, yeah, we don't have income tax. And then, so just out of curiosity, we did kind of a search. And believe it or not, with the exception of Massachusetts and California, all the states are pretty much on par with the amount of tax revenue they get from each citizen, each eligible citizen. It's just a question of how they collect it. Is it sales tax, property tax, income tax, or whatever? But everybody pretty much has the same tax revenue across the states, with the exception of the two highly, highly charged ones, which are California and Massachusetts. Now, then again, if you live in the city of New York, that New York City becomes an entity all into itself, and it becomes one of those top 3 as far as taxation. Quite often I think you're right. I cannot argue with you on that. And I will tell you, it's not just a commodity, but a vote. The only time that we're important is when it comes within re-election campaigning time. And they're going to tell us what we want to hear. We vote for them because they said what we wanted them to. Then they do what they want to do when they get back in anyway. I am kind of the mind of re-elect no one. And I would love to see term limits on congressmen and senators, which, by the way, is the 7th Amendment. The 7th article in the Constitution, Article 7, the ratification of the ratification of the conventions of 9 states shall be sufficient for the establishment of this Constitution between the states so ratifying the same. Now, the next one, done in convention by the unanimous consent of the states present the 17th day of September. But anyhow, this talks about the Convention of States. And so we know that the congressmen and the senators aren't going to vote themselves term limits. They aren't going to vote for a balanced budget. They aren't going to vote for everything that we want. So what we have to do is we have to have a convention of states and have the states propose the amendments. And as long as 2/3 of the states propose the amendments, then it's automatically ratified. So that's what we need to do. But people are afraid of it. They're afraid that something really stupid is going to get in there. I don't think 2/3 of the states are going to ratify something that's really, really stupid. I will. Can I say it a different way? I'm going to agree with you. I'm going to disagree with you. I'm not going to say it's in China, but I'm going to say it's in Chinese hands. How's that? Can we agree on that? Let me see here. You are stereotyping. The ones I know are not at all like that. And even the poor Mormons get more of their help from the church. I hope I'm not stereotyping. Don't think I've said anything about them. Hello, KP Heathen. Welcome. Okay, back to the banners. Let me get down here and let's go back to the banners. And we are now on. So the answer to what is the freedom of religion is you can practice any religion. And you also have the freedom not to practice a religion, if you so choose. So agnosticism and atheism are also allowed under the Constitution. And also some of the diabolic and demonic things that we see, coming about. I would say that there's a lot of people who practice a religion of cash, of the U.S. dollar, and that they're chasing and will do anything for the U.S. dollar. That has become the religion of pursuing of the dollar. And I don't know if we're ever going to officially recognize that as religion, but I would say that people lose their morality, people lose their identity, people lose a lot of different things because of the pursuit of money. Speaking of which, the next question number 11, what is the major economic system in the United States? What is the major economic system in the United States? And I would say that started to change about 1937. Yes, capitalism, Yahoo, or the free market system. We could call it that too. And now we are moving further and further away from capitalism and further away from the free market system because we are mandating certain things. So, if we had a true caveat emptor, if we had a true free market, then we could have two products, one of them highly dangerous and the other one very safe. And it would be the purchaser's choice as to which one to purchase. But we've got this OSHA thing. So now the government has stepped in and told us what we can and cannot buy. We cannot buy something that is dangerous to us. Well, that defeats the whole purpose of capitalism. That defeats the whole purpose of a free market society. If I had a choice between the two, then I would choose the safer one probably if I was aware of the safety features. So starting with 1935, 37, when we started the Social Security Administration and working on up through some of the OSHA limitations that we have, some of the other consumer laws that we have, we are moving further and further away from a market-driven or free economy. The same thing with a lot of our banking laws. It used to be you had Morgans and Liberty silver dollars and silver certificates and everything else. And now we have this fiat currency called the dollar that was established the fiat currency was established in Bretton Woods conference. But, our monetary system is nowhere close to what it should be. And so we have this thing. The Federal Reserve is not a government agency. It's a private organization. And, so it is a group of bankers, central bankers, who are dictating interest rates, and they even charge the government interest. So, the Federal Reserve is not everything good. We need to do away with that. And that was one of the things I think that really got Trump into a lot of trouble, was he wanted to do away with the Federal Reserve and go back to a precious gold, silver standard, like we had up until Nixon in 1972. When we started floating our currency, the fiat currency, is when we started getting all this inflation. And that's really terrible. So that's a good question. I don't know the answer to that. But, it sure does seem like we're down that road, doesn't it? It sure seems like we're on the road to that. I can buy that. It's a mixed market system. Some things, Obamacare definitely took us into the mandated healthcare. Up until then, that was your choice. That was your, you had freedom of choice. You could do what you wanted to as far as healthcare. And, so that kind of took away freedom of choice. And that should not have happened. As a matter of fact, I'm surprised nobody has really gone to the Supreme Court about it, because the deciding vote was cast in reality by a person who should have declared herself as not being eligible to vote for it, because prior to her ascension to the Supreme Court, she was the advocate for Obamacare under the Obama administration. So therefore, she had a personal interest in approving it. And so she should have not voted on that. So I don't know if any of you know it, but here in Round Rock, we have one of the very few what they call Provident Living Centers. And you'll see I'll have cans. I'm down to where I'm only going once a month now. There was a while there 20 years ago, I was going maybe getting 2 cans every other week. But in the Provident Living, so you go in the front door and you have the Bishop's Warehouse to the left, and to the right you have the Provident Living Center. So to the left, the Bishop's Warehouse, If you are having economic problems and you are a regular member of the church and meeting your tithing and everything else, and you come upon hard times, you can get a note from your bishop, and you can go there, and it's just like a commissary. You can pick up toiletries, food, everything you need to sustain your family for 2 more weeks. Um, and then to the right is the people who are buying stuff for long-term storage. So as far as a social environment and what they do for each other and how they work with each other, totally admirable. They have tried for so long to convert me. When I was being certified in the Covey Institute and later in um, the time management system. Um, I forget the name of the time management system I was certified in. Both of them were headquartered out of Salt Lake City. So when I went there for training, I probably did 7 trips up to Salt Lake City, and they put me in this hotel right across from Temple Square. And they'd always take me over to the old Santa Fe Railroad building, and then the dining room is right there, equal, where you're sitting there staring at the angel Moroni, who is blowing his trumpet into your ear while you're eating dinner. So you're overlooking the temple in Temple Square. But they've tried unsuccessfully to convert me for 40 years. But I know enough about the religion that I used to host the mission when I was single. I would host the missionaries, and they'd come to my apartment and for Monday night home because they want the family to be together on Monday nights and not have TV or anything else. So you'd sit, talk, pray, discuss religion, play games and stuff like that. And so the missionaries used to come to my apartment to do that up until 1984 when I got married. But for some reason, it kicked me out. Um, that is fantastic. Brilliant observation. Brilliant observation. Um, Let me see where we are down here. Yeah, the Amish, the Mennonites, Franklin Planner. Thank you, ABC Patriot. And they also had Franklin. They also had uh, project management course, and there was fantastic stuff, fantastic trainings. I really enjoyed working with them, and I really enjoyed teaching their products. Nothing better than 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. The only problem I have with 7 Habits of Highly Effective People is that it was extremely theoretical, and it didn't really give you hardcore things to do in order to make it come about, to make it into fruition. But no, Dr. Covey had a brilliant system. The Franklin time management system was brilliant. And then when you put the Franklin time management and the Q2 time management system from Franklin Covey together and into a new integrated system, oh, it was phenomenal. I still have a Franklin time management planner that I use. Yeah, it's really interesting, Fixers, because I'm Catholic too, and so getting the Catholic versus Mormon views on a lot of things is really funny. I don't know. Have you been watching The Chosen? There's one line in The Chosen that tells me that they're trying to appease to the Mormons, and it's Jesus is being interrogated by Nicodemus. And Nicodemus says, "Have you come to replace the law of Moses?" And Jesus says, "I am the law of Moses." That is nowhere in the Bible. That only appears in the Book of Mormon. So I found that really intriguing that they were kind of appeasing to the Mormons with that one particular sentence in that one particular version. Um, he got taken up. The gurus, the masters of the mouse, decided that they were just going to kind of do their own thing, and it lost me. It just threw me out. Okay, let me see where we are here. I think we've only got one or two left. Yeah, here we go. So here is our last question on the citizenship test that we'll talk about tonight, and that is define the rule of law. And there are four things that they're specifically looking at. They would like for you to answer a couple of them in answering the citizenship question. So what is the rule of law? What are four characteristics of the rule of law? Of course, the exorcist could probably tell, with my St. Benedict crucifix and my St. Francis of Assisi. Now, the reason I keep St. Francis of Assisi around is to remind me, and he's attributed with the phrase, to be on your best behavior, because sometimes you are the only Bible that people will ever read. Kind of reminding us that, people are going to make all kinds of accusations and statements about us. And so, if we are going to say do something, we need to be doing it ourselves. And so we are the living Bible for a vast majority of people on the face of the earth. And so that's why I keep him around, is so that I remember to conduct myself accordingly, that I have to remember that I'm constantly being judged by my fellow man as to my faith and what I should be doing. Dragon Slayer, that's a good question. What they should be, because they're definitely not being followed now. Absolutely. Yeah, I wholeheartedly agree with you. Little Lone Pepper, great. That's one of them. Absolutely. The equal application of the law to everybody. Equality under the law. Absolutely. They say that justice is blind. We have blind justice. Remember, she's blindfolded, and she has the torch of enlightenment, and then she has the balance of scales, so that's equality for everybody, an equal measure for everyone. Any other ideas? Okay, so here's what the U.S. Customs and Immigration Service says. Everybody has to follow the law. So the law is applicable to everybody. Leaders must. I'll give you an exception to that. You'll laugh at this one. Leaders must obey the same laws that the people do. Government has to obey the law, unless they can get by without being caught. And no one is above the law. So the one law that is written that is totally different is the Fair Labor Standards Act of 1933. Most people don't realize it, but the FLSA, the Fair Labor Standards Act, does a couple things. So it gives us the 40-hour work week. It defines overtime. It defines child labor laws. So it does a whole bunch of things. But there are three different versions of the law. So the first one is, for example, you don't have to pay minimum wage to somebody who works for an elected official. So anybody who is a clerk, typist, or anything like that for an elected official, senator, representative, even a county judge, mayor, something like that. If it's an elected official and they hire somebody, they do not have to pay overtime. They do not have to give them minimum wage. Okay. And now the second one is governmental entities. So if you work for the government and you work overtime, the government does not have to pay you time and a half. What they do is they give you compensatory time off, or CTO. So for every hour of overtime over 40 hours in a week that you work, the government has to give you 1.5 hours of time off in the future at the time of your choice. So, and then the third one, of course, is for the average dip like us, So that's one example I can think of specifically where they have written the law so that it's different depending upon the level of government and who you are, whether or not even whether you are or are not a government entity. 40-hour work week. Well, So in the law, in the FLSA of 1933, it says that you have two different classes of employees. You have people who are exempt from the law. So these are managers, leaders, etc. And they are exempt from the overtime rule. They are exempt from minimum wage, although they have their own standards for as far as a different thing. They have a minimum salary rather than minimum wage. And so that they are exempt from that. So then they say, well, what do we call all the other people who have to follow the law? Okay, do we call them subject to the law? Well, that kind of monarchish, kind of like you're a subject and these other people are exempt. So they said, how do we come across with a term that's going to be applicable to these people, but not yet necessarily offensive? So they say not exempt or non-exempt. So all the people who have to follow the overtime rules and minimum wage and everything else are non-exempt. They are not exempt from the law. They have to follow it. No, Miranda rights are not considered a rule of law. The Miranda rights, Miranda versus Map versus Ohio, Danio Escobedo versus Illinois, Miranda versus Arizona. So the Miranda law is a Supreme Court interpretation. So it's not a rule of law, it's an interpretation of the Supreme Court. So because we don't have anything else defining it, because we've never come back and legislated that, then that interpretation stands as a form of law. So good question. Shenanigans. Yeah, I think Miranda versus Arizona was 1964, if I'm not mistaken. Let me check here real quick. You guys are taxing my knowledge tonight. Miranda versus Arizona. 1966, I'm sorry. Yeah, so 1966, not 1964. I was close. As far as what? So the only thing I've been talking about the Fair Labor Standards Act of 1933, and that was a law passed by Congress. So that's authorized under Article 1, Section 8 of the Constitution. So that's within the constitutional purview of Congress to pass that law. Now, they did pass 3 different forms of it, but in Article 3, when we get to the judicial system, that's where we have the equal application of law and everything else. So that all appears under Article 3. You also have some amendments. So like the 14th Amendment specifically talks about equal application of the law. Let me get to the 14th Amendment and I'll read that to you here real quick. All persons born or naturalized in the United States and subject to the jurisdiction thereof are citizens of the United States and of the state wherein they reside. No state shall make or enforce any law which shall abridge the privileges. Let me see here. Maybe I'm wrong. I thought it had equal application of the law. Oh, 15th Amendment, I'm sorry. The right of citizens of the United States to vote. No, that's the right to vote. 16th is income tax. Golly. Which one is it that says equal application of the law? And then, of course, you have the 6th, 7th, and 8th Amendments. 6th is, speedy prosecution, public trial, impartial jury, right to be confronted by the witnesses against you, have the assistance of counsel for your defense. All that's mentioned in Miranda, right? Because it's mentioned in the 6th Amendment. In the 7th Amendment, we talk about the right to trial by jury. And the 8th Amendment prohibits excessive bail or habeas corpus. And then the 9th and 10th Amendments are basically preserving the rights of the states and preserving the rights of the individuals. So the 9th is the individuals and the 10th is the states. Now, the 17th Amendment. Let me look up here real quick. I believe it's the 17th Amendment. The 17th Amendment. The Senate of the United States shall be comprised of 2 senators from each state, elected by the people thereof. Now, this supersedes what is in Article 2. Okay, in Article 2, the senators were appointed by the state legislatures to represent the interests of the state. Because remember, we had the interest of the individual, the interest of the state, and then the interest of the federal government. So the House representative represented the people, the senators represented the state, and they met. And that's why you had the 2 chambers. When we passed the 17th Amendment that said that senators were going to be elected by the people, we bypassed the states. So the states are no longer have the power that they were originally intended to have in the 10th Amendment of the Constitution because of how we elect our senators. So basically what we have is the senators now represent the people and go for the votes of the people, just like the representatives do, only it's once every 6 years instead of once every 2 years. So they give you this 100 questions, Diana, to study, and then they give you 25 at random, and you have to answer 20 of the 25 correctly in order to get your citizenship. Okay, so we are at 1 hour and 6 minutes again. Gosh, we keep going over. I'm sorry that I take so much time. I really apologize for that. I like to try to keep it at 1 hour. I don't know now, but when my husband took it, he had to have at least a 70 or higher. But for him, it was easy, and he only got 1 wrong. It's because he couldn't understand the question. So 70%, if you got 25, so that's 4% for each. So that would be roughly 7. So you get 7. So you'd have to get 18 out of 25 correct to get a 70. But I think the standard now is 80%, 20 out of 25. Okay, so next week we'll do the same thing. We'll come up with another 12 or so odd questions off the test. Go through that. Once we've gotten through all of these, then we're going to go back and we're going to take a more detailed look at the Constitution. Because basically, if it's not mentioned in Article 1, Section 8 of the Constitution, and I want to say the 13th Amendment, but I know I'm going to be wrong because that's slavery. 16th Amendment. Other than the 16th Amendment and Article 1, Section 8, those are the only 2 things that that says the Congress can do these 2 things. The 16th Amendment, they can tax your income. And then Article 1, Section 8, there's a list of things that they can specifically do. What you're going to find is our Congress, our current Congress, violates that on a regular basis. And, they have all these pork items and line items and everything else, and it's crazy. But we need to get back to where we follow this. And so I'm hoping that by us learning this better together, that we can elect people who are going to enforce it, and we can return back to the country that we're supposed to have. But the book of Numbers, let me see here if I can find it. Chapter 6, verses 24, 25, 26, the Lord bless you and keep you. The Lord let his face shine upon you and be gracious to you. The Lord look upon you kindly and grant you peace. So I want you to do me a favor. Remember that we're all in this together so we can come out the other side together. We've got to stay united. We've got to listen to each other. We've got to love one another. So please be kind, polite, and respectful to each other, because the only way we're going to get through this is togetherness is the key. Take care, everybody. Please stay safe. Watch the news. Scary stuff going on internationally. Don't let your preps falter for a second. Love you. Take care. Bye-bye.